Hello, human peoples. You're listening to the podcast network of Gamefully Unemployed. To support us and gain access to great exclusive podcasts like Fox Mulder is a Maniac, Tom and Jeff Watch Batman, Star Trek The Next Futurama, and our latest show, Spiel Boys, head over to patreon.com/gamefullyunemployed. We do game streaming, movie nights with our patrons every Friday night, and you can even commission your own podcast about anything you want. Literally anything, within reason, and we have to do it. You are quite frankly out of excuses not to go visit patreon.com/gamefullyunemployed. That's patreon.com/GAMEFULLY unemployed, which is spelled like it sounds.
All you motherfuckers are gonna pay. You are the ones who are the ball lickers. We're gonna fuck your mothers while you watch and cry like little whiny bitches. We're gonna make them eat our shit, then shit out our shit, and then eat their shit that's made up of our shit that we made them eat. And then all you motherfuckers are next. Love, Jane, Silent Bob.
Oh yeah!
One Old Smith, New Smith. That's what this is called.
Is that what we're calling it?
It's One Smith, Two Smith, Old Smith, New Smith.
Sweet.
Yeah. That's the name of the podcast
That's
you're
the
listening to.
title of the show.
Yeah, the hosts of the podcast you're listening to are named David Bell.
The name of the second host of the show that you're listening to is Tom Ryman.
I like this energy.
Yeah,
We should do this more
I
often.
don't know what we're doing.
The producer of the podcast. It's like an NPR
I was about to say, we're
intro,
speaking
right?
like NPR credits.
Yeah. The producer of the podcast is at Nerd Numbers.
Thank you,
this
at
is-
Nerd Numbers, for producing
is-
this podcast.
Yeah. This is fresh air. I used to...
Now
listen,
hear this.
It's not what this
Is that what
podcast
it
is
is?
about. I don't know, man. All I know is I would come home from high school. Well, my dad owned a store, and it was near the high school, so I would go to the store after high school. I'd have to walk to it. I'd get a soda and a Subway, a delicious Subway sandwich, and I'd go to my father's store, which is not a fun store. It was an art gallery store, so it was like a framing shop. So, like, when you're a kid, there's not much to be, I had some fun there, don't get me wrong. But like, it's not a particular.
It's not a fun store for kids.
Yeah, and so it's an art gallery, framing store. So guess what was on 24/7 there? NPR blasting through the speakers. So you'd get there, and I'd wait for my dad's store to close so I could get home, listening to just NPR all day. Just that's all. That's the story.
All things considered, that's the show.
All things considered, yeah. When I got older, I found myself listening to Wait, Don't Tell Me and Prairie Home Companion, and I realized that I was truly lost at that point.
Yeah, no, you've always
Like,
been.
I was old.
You've always been like a 48-year-old man.
I know. And that was the start of it.
Mm-hmm.
What are we doing? Oh, yeah. So we thanked at Nerd Numbers. This is a podcast where, so what we've been doing, folks, if you haven't followed along, and you really should, especially if you're a Kevin Smith fan, which, Tom, I believe we both are Kevin Smith fans.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. We both grew up with him. We were the
not
exact
as much
right
as I
age.
used to be. Not as much as I used to be. But like for his first like 4 or 5 movies, like I was the right age exactly. I was in high school. I was really into Kevin Smith for like a lot of the 90s for sure.
Right. I also, when I was a delivery driver, right at the beginning of podcasts, Kevin Smith was kind of not a pioneer, but he was one of the first.
He was
big
one of the first
podcasters.
big ones. Yeah, I did.
So
I listened to him a lot as well in the early years.
I listened to the Smodcast. And I bring that up because the movie we're covering is actually based off a podcast. So we coupled this with Chasing Amy, which we already did. So the idea here is we're starting. We do one about his early work, and we'll do one about his late work, and we're meeting in the middle. So we did Clerks and the Jay and Silent Bob reboot. Then we did Mallrats and Yoga Hosers, and now we're doing Chasing Amy and Tusk. And we're seeing if they match up and what the differences are in his instincts. And Tusk is the first one we're covering. Not the first one chronologically, but the first one we're covering that is Kevin Smith doing horror.
Yes.
A horror movie.
It's actually his second horror movie, I think, after Red State.
Yes.
But the first that we've covered.
I want to start with a blazing hot take. I think Kevin Smith is better at horror than comedy. Mind you, I really like his comedy. but I think he can really do a horror movie.
I think he can, and that's my biggest takeaway from this movie is it feels like he lacked the confidence to go all the way. So he puts a lot of silly stuff in there that sort of doesn't need to be in there and kind of makes the movie take longer than it should.
There's a point in this movie that we'll get to where I think it comes to a screeching halt.
Yeah.
But I think
it's when Johnny Depp shows up.
It is. It's when Johnny Depp shows up. But I think his horror comedy instincts are good.
Yeah.
It's just every now and then he goes a little too far.
Right. It's like he doesn't. It feels like, and I don't think there's this. I don't remember any moments like that or any big moments like that in Red State. But it felt like in this movie he was like a little. I think this movie is almost great, honestly. I think it would have been great if he had just gone all the way and just made it as weird as fucking possible.
Right. Because Kevin Smith has one thing about his horror movies that I find really unique is that he's very good at you not quite knowing where it's going to go. Red State, which I believe we're going to cover, so we shouldn't talk too much on, but like it has so many turns that you're like, fucking what? Yeah. Where you don't know what kind of movie you're watching. This does too, although I noticed something about this film, Tom.
What's that?
This movie has the same beats as another horror film.
Psycho.
Yep.
This
is Psycho.
It's Psycho.
And that just delights me to no fucking end. To the point that they find his car in the swamp.
Yeah, he tells us a few times, and then that's like when he like really wants you to make the connection. Is when they find the car in the swamp.
That's so funny to me.
There's taxidermy hints, and it's like structured the same. I forget when it clicked for me, but it was like it did suddenly click that it's like, oh shit, this is Psycho. He's just doing Psycho.
It clicked for me when we were halfway through the film and he became a walrus.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean by Kevin Smith's pacing, is that you assume certain things are going to happen, and then he'll let them happen earlier than you think, or way later, or in these weird parts, and he suddenly will just stop and say, I'm going to tell a different story. Red State was that, where the things that kept happening, you're like, oh, I expected that to happen in like the third act. And now, oh, here's John Goodman. Here's a different story. And it's like, shit.
Yeah.
This is really cool.
Yeah.
Because I genuinely don't know where it's going to go. And that's huge. That's huge for a horror movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Justin Long, who is the main character for the first half of the movie, is for all intents and purposes out of the movie at like 48 minutes.
Yeah.
He becomes the walrus very quickly.
Yeah, basically, shower scene is walrus.
Yeah.
And so it starts with podcasters. It starts with the biggest revelation, the A24 logo.
Yeah.
To which I went, oh my fucking God, I can't believe this is A24.
Oh, there's something else I wanted to say about, just to further agree with you, that I think Kevin Smith should just make more completely genuine horror movies, like totally earnest horror movies. I think his writing works better in comedies, because all of Michael Parks plays the mad scientist in this.
Yeah.
And all of his monologues, he has several. He speaks almost exclusively in monologues. And they're all riveting. And it's
absolutely
both because Michael Parks is very good. He's one of those.
So I need more Michael Parks.
Yeah, he's one of those actors that never became famous, but he's been working for like 50 years, I think.
He had the brief moment where Tarantino, who is friends with Kevin Smith, and Robert Rodriguez, all fell in love with him in like the same summer. Yeah, and he was in a bunch. He's also in Red State,
and he's in Dusk Till Dawn.
Yep, and he's in
Kill Bill.
Kill Bill. He's in Planet Terror. And so they threw him in all these things because he's genuinely just so fucking good.
He's really good, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's part his delivery, and then the way Kevin Smith is able to use his sort of overly... he's been accused of being overly verbose, and that's certainly... You can see that. Like, it's definitely in a lot of his comments.
He is overly verbose.
He's overly verbose. His characters speak like no human being speaks.
Right, and again, this is coming from fans of him.
Yeah.
Like I enjoy his movies greatly, but it is like there's a certain, like, when people tell me, like, oh, I can't stand his movies, I don't really push back.
No,
because I'm like, yeah, it's like Tarantino. There's like a very particular tone to it that's not reality. And yet, yeah, when you take all that and put it in a horror comedy, it just,
his writing style like really works when he's leaning into like his vocabulary, and it's like putting like a gothic flair on like a Kevin Smith rant. It becomes these really creepy, but like at the same time like classic boys' life adventure stories with a creepy tinge to it.
Right. You know what also?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
I was just saying, it's just every bit of monologue that Michael Parks has in this movie is great, and it's like, even like particularly from a writing standpoint. So like one of my biggest takeaways from watching this movie is like, man, his writing really works for a movie like this.
Yeah. You know what else I would say really works that he does in his comedies but works in this is his lack of camera movement. His style as a director really works for horror, where it's like I noticed both this and Red State, he'll do more dynamic shots, but he'll still lock down the camera. And that works when you're building tension.
Yes.
When it's two characters just talking about their dicks, I think it still works for comedy, but it's, it's a little more like it can be seen as boring. Whereas
it's without purpose. And in this, it has a purpose, or it feels intentional in a movie like this.
It just works really damn well.
Yeah.
And I had, by the way, we should mention, I hadn't seen this film. Had you?
Nope.
Yeah. I'm not a big body horror fan. And this came out around the time of like Hostel in that era. So I was like not that excited for it and never got around to it.
Well, this is almost 10 years after Hostel.
Yeah, you're right.
But
I guess Red State was more that, but even Red
State's not body horror either. It's
no, but this was more the Hostel feel.
This is the more direct comparison here is the Human Centipede.
Yes, you're right. This is Human Centipede.
Yeah, it's like
and
that
so
idea.
I think, and I think it was just like I wasn't particularly interested in that. So I guess let's go through the plot then. Because it's about podcasters.
It sure is, Dave. It's about a couple of white dudes having a podcast where they're laughing at each other's jokes. And I found it really hard to relate to that.
Yeah, exactly. It really is. Yeah, I'm sure Kevin Smith really had trouble writing these characters as well. But they're like cruel, which is actually this kind of pissed me off. I wanted to write a script starting with this idea of this type of podcasters, and I kind of don't now because I'm like, he did it.
Yeah, he did it.
Where they're kind of cruel, almost true crimey.
They're
Justin
more
Long plays an asshole.
They're more like those like original pranksters, or they're more like those the kind of prank guys. Where it's like the whole point of their show and their comedy is that they're attacking people and embarrassing people and making fun of people. Like, it's cruel. Right. They're very cruel. Yeah.
Yeah, and they're in their own little podcast world, so they don't even realize like that this whole groove of theirs is like so toxic. And I think the thing that symbolizes it, and it's a joke, it's a very obvious joke, but it kind of works, is that they call themselves, it's the not, as in not seeing, not see. So it's the not see party. Yeah. And they keep talking about the not see party.
NOTSEE, yeah.
Yeah, where the idea is he does interviews and his friend does not see the interviews. And it seems like a dumb joke at first, but the idea is it's still that idea of like them being very callous with a very obviously like the fact that they trivialized that. Like, yeah, we're Nazis, Later he says, you bring shame to the Nazi party.
Yeah. The really funny joke that the best payoff of that for me, because at first I was kind of like eye rolly. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, me too. I was like, I get it. That's funny, I guess.
But later on, when like Justin Long is missing and his girlfriend and Haley Joel Osment are trying to find him, and she's on the phone with the authorities. And
they want a picture.
Yeah, they want a picture of Justin Long. She's like, okay, you got to go to the web. He's a famous podcaster. You just go to his website. It's got all the pictures up there. And she says it's www.naziparty.com. And it cuts over to Haley Joel Osment, and he's like, spell it.
Yeah.
And it cuts back to her. It's like, oh, they hung up. I can't believe they hung up on me.
Yeah. God, I love Haley Joel in his comedy era here.
Yeah,
he's the second podcaster.
Yeah, he's fine in this. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, like it's that it just reflects the callousness of what they do.
Yeah.
And so it serves a purpose ultimately, which I thought was that was good. I also there's some Nazi stuff throughout. I really like the line "You don't say Hitler in an airport."
Yeah.
Where he's going through Canada. So his ringtone is also the fucking Smodcast, or like one of the Smodcast music themes.
Yep.
That they use. It's Ralph Garman, very obviously. So he's going to Canada from Los Angeles to interview this kid who's basically the equivalent of Star Wars kid, but like a real sword. So he cut himself.
He cut his leg off.
Yeah, he shows up and he learns that the kid has killed himself.
Yeah.
And he is such a scumbag. He's just mad at the kid for killing himself.
He's such a piece of shit about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's got like the best piece of shit mustache in this movie.
Yeah.
Justin Long playing a scumbag. Like Kevin Smith uses Justin Long very, very well in his movies.
Yes, he really does. And so him as a scumbag works perfectly.
Yeah.
He runs into the Yoga Hosers, which is so weird to me that this is the introduction to them.
Yeah.
And Johnny Depp. I didn't know Johnny Depp was in this.
Neither did I.
It was not a pleasant surprise.
No,
but
even worse than it was when we watched Yoga Hosers.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Because now we've had to sit through that whole. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, he's kind of the last person I wanted to see in this film.
Well, and it's also we'll get to his part because his presence
because it,
in
like
the
we
movie
said, it
kind of
also
ruins
doesn't
the
work.
movie. Yeah, it
Yeah.
really brings the movie to a halt for no shit about 30 minutes.
Yeah, and it's weird to me that
It's a weird instinct.
It's a weird instinct, and it's weird to me that Yoga Hosers hadn't been made yet, because I'd almost forgive it more if it had been made. But since this is the first time we meet the characters, it's kind of weird. Although the Yoga Hosers themselves, the two girls, they work fine in this, I thought.
They do what they need to do. Yeah, they're fine.
Yeah. So he meets up with them. They go. He goes to a convenience store, and he finds this guy who's like put out flyers of like he wants to have conversations, and he's like, "Oh, this could work for the podcast. I got to get something." I love that they're acting like, "Oh, we got to get something for the podcast." And it's like, well, that's not realistic in my head for podcast.
Yeah, no, it's like your show could be literally anything.
Yeah, we know firsthand.
Yes.
So, but this is great pacing. He's in the guy's house 10 minutes in. 10 minutes, we're in the house. With Michael Park's house. And he's telling him these wild stories about him meeting Hemingway and him going to the Arctic to find a great white shark and his boat sinking.
Sinks, yeah.
And him meeting a walrus. And just that time, Justin Long gets woozy, and he's been drinking this tea the whole time, and he gets knocked out. And it becomes this first gaslighting thing where when he comes to, he's like, "You were bitten by a brown recluse, and we had to get rid of your leg." But it's so obviously like gaslighting.
Yeah.
I also love their relationship, which is like Justin Long, Michael Parks, they make him this like worldly man who seems classy, right?
Yes.
At first. And Justin Long is just such a D-bag. And he's calling him like a rapscallion. Like, I love that he's like, aha, yes, this gentleman rapscallion is my guest. And it's just this asshole.
Yeah.
26 minutes in, he gets drugged. He wakes up, his leg has been removed. And that's when you realize you probably realized already, but Michael Parks is not who he says he is. He's definitely not telling him the truth, but he's like, dinner is at 6. And then the dinner scene is when we first get the moment that like, okay, it's very clear that he's lying to him. And it's signified in the fact that Michael Parks has been in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
This whole time. And when Justin Long starts freaking out and being like, "I don't think this was a spider. You got to let me go. You got to let me call someone." Michael Parks stands up from his wheelchair, walks across the table, and slaps him.
Mm-hmm.
It's good. He also uses the term shuffa, which is a Bruce Willis reference.
Is it?
Did you ever watch The Evening with Kevin Smith?
I did, but it's been like 10 years.
He talks about when he worked with Bruce Willis, one of the things he did was go through his script and he started crossing stuff off and going, that's shuffa, that's shuffa, shuffa. And he had to ask him, like, what is shuffa? And it was like, it's just extra stuff that you don't need. Which is funny for for a Kevin Smith movie. So he has him say enough of this, like, shuffa in the scene, which I thought was a nice little reference.
Sure.
Yeah.
For all that's the one aspect when we were talking about the Jay and Silent Bob reboot, where it's like, to really get everything in these movies, you need to be a fan of not only his movies, but of, like, the man himself, and, like, know stuff about his life.
Yeah, there's a bit of an ego to this stuff.
Yeah.
But I would say in this one, at least, it's a lot of inside jokes.
Yeah.
They aren't load bearing.
Right, like the Chuffa thing, I could have gone the rest of my life not understanding that was a reference to something, and it doesn't make any difference. Yeah. It doesn't affect the movie at all.
Yeah. Michael Parks presents what his goal is. The age-old question, he calls it, is man indeed a walrus at heart?
Yeah.
And it's just like, oh, okay.
This is
just unhinged.
Yeah, this is what I think this movie does really well, and what got me. I don't know. What makes, like, Johnny Depp suddenly showing up as, like, an Inspector Clouseau detective really disappointing. Apart from the fact that it's Johnny Depp, notwithstanding, just the idea of the character, is because he introduces this thing, like, that line is fucking hilarious. That is a ridiculous thing to say, but the way it's presented, it's the way it's executed, the way we understand the kind of situation that Justin Long is in, he's playing it completely straight, even though it is this mad idea. Like, it is completely Alice in Wonderland unhinged crazy.
It's the kind of thing we need in more horror.
Yes.
Like stuff like Hostel, where it's like, oh, they're selling rich folks to do this. It's like, no. Just have it be basically Dr. Strangelove, precious bodily fluids.
Yeah.
Like, that was what was so good about that, is that it's both funny and chilling.
Right.
When you realize, like, oh my God.
Oh, he is completely, it's in that scene when Mandrake goes to talk to Colonel Ripper and he starts talking about the bodily fluids, and they're showing you Peter Sellers' face. And he's like, oh.
That's a realization of, like, I'm going to die because this person is out of
this
control.
guy's completely untethered, yeah.
Yeah. And so that's this moment, basically, and you realize, like, oh, fuck, I'm fucked. Mm-hmm. There's no reasoning with this person.
Yeah, it's beyond reason.
Yep. We then learn at this point that the girlfriend is having an affair with Haley Joel.
Yeah.
And they do something that was interesting, is that they have her do, like, a monologue at him, and you kind of know who it is, because it's like, well, there's one other character.
There's one other character in this movie, yeah.
But you think at first that, or at least I did, that he was telling her that Justin Long is cheating on her to take advantage of her. Then we learn that he actually is. And so it's the way they present that scene is like Haley Joel seems sinister at first.
But he doesn't have any lines, which is interesting. It's one of the more interesting scenes in a Kevin Smith movie, because it's just a shot of her performance, and we can see Haley Joel just off screen, but his back is to us. And it's just her delivering this monologue
about how she loves him, but she knows he's cheating on her. Yeah. And she can't get over that. And she's, like, really thankful that he's here with her, even though it makes her a bad person. And she's very conflicted. But the realization is that Justin Long they keep doing these flashbacks, which were very important, where they show, like, what happened to my old nerd that you used to be. And now you're just this dickhead podcaster, essentially. And so it's like he's changed. He's gotten more cruel. And we learn that he is, in fact, cheating on her. And Haley Joel is actually kind of the kinder character. Like, you could moralize what he's doing. It's not.
Yeah.
But it's clear that he keeps going on the road. He doesn't want her there. And they've been sleeping together while he's gone. Because
he initially, in the first flashback, she says she wants to come with him to Canada to interview this Star Wars kid. And he's like, oh no, Teddy, his podcasting partner, Haley Joel, he gets jealous when you go with me, and it makes a bad episode. But then we see a flashback, I think, like 2 flashbacks later, when he's talking to Haley Joel, he doesn't actually have a problem with it. Like, he's like, why don't you?
Right.
She says she wants to come with you. Why don't you bring her with you this time? He's like, oh, I don't like to have her around because it's when I pick up my strange. So like he's lying about why he doesn't want to bring her. It's because he wants to screw around while he's on the road. Because he sucks.
Exactly. Also, Haley Joel, if you notice the next morning, they're both clothed.
Yeah.
And so it's implied that they might even not even have a sexual thing. It's an emotional affair she's having with Haley Joel, basically. Mm-hmm. Like it's that idea of like Haley Joel wants him to do the right thing. He wants him to treat her well.
Yeah.
He doesn't. Yeah. But he like says he's taking her to the Getty and stuff like that. So he's clearly like filling in.
He's right. He is filling the role of the boyfriend that Justin Long is supposed to be doing. Yeah. And so we get this interesting, by showing us those flashbacks, we're showing how he sort of figuratively became less human. And then as they run concurrently with what's happening in present time, as he's literally becoming less human.
Right. So meanwhile, he cuts off the leg, and then we get one more moment where he is doing a monologue. I think about the walrus, right? Mm-hmm. And like he's just telling it, and you don't see what he's talking to. And they finally pull out, and Justin Long has both legs gone, and his arms are sewn to his torso.
He's made his arms into flippers, yeah.
Yep. And so it's like, okay, we've hit the point of no return.
Yeah.
Because you expect it to be something where it's like he's going to do a little body horror and then escape. But no. So we have the Haley Joel stuff, and then we have... Oh, sorry, I missed one important thing. Is that he gets access to his phone briefly, mm-hmm. and he calls them
both.
Both of them.
And they're together.
Probably should have called the cops, but whatever.
He should have, yeah. But they're together, and neither one of them picks up the phone.
Yeah. Honestly, cops might have been less useful, to be honest. Is you call 911 with that? Like, it's actually better to call someone who will continually advocate for you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that's true.
So, and then, they wake up in the morning with Kevin Smith's dog in the background in the bedroom picture. And so then, so he gets knocked out. Then we have the sewing arms. And then we're an hour in, and we just cut to he's a walrus.
He is a walrus now, and it is horrible.
Yep. He's screaming wordlessly because he has no tongue.
Yeah.
And he's just a big flesh walrus. Imagine, like, taking a bunch of skin of a human and rearranging it to make a walrus.
He's a Leatherface flesh walrus. Like, you can see other people's faces on his side.
Yeah.
Because he's made this walrus suit out of a number of people he's abducted.
Yes.
This kudos, honestly, to Justin Long for this. This can't have been easy to do.
Yeah, because he's just in an outfit. He's just in a sack.
Rest of the movie, he's basically just crawling around in a walrus suit, just screaming the most inhuman scream you can think of. It is genuinely uncomfortable.
Yeah, he does like water stunts, which I thought like I would never want to be immobile, even on a controlled set. Like that's terrifying.
Yeah.
And so like basically what happens now is he starts trying to make him more of a walrus. He's feeding him fish. He tries to make him swim, and when he swims, he notices there are a bunch of dead walrus people, I should say.
The dead,
at the
rotting walrus people at the bottom of his tank. That was cool. That was a cool shot.
So you realize, like, oh, okay, he's burned through a lot.
Oh, he's just been doing this.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not like the last one. I'm just the latest one.
Yeah. It's fucking wild.
Yeah, this movie is so fucking out of its head.
It is. And again, we're an hour in. And then, again, like Psycho, a private investigator shows up. The problem is that in this case, it's Johnny Depp doing a bit. And this is when the movie comes to a screeching halt. And
you could even still have this character, I think, if
just don't make him this. Don't make him fucking...
It does feel like, and again, I'm guessing, obviously, I have no idea what Kevin Smith was actually thinking when he added this character, but it feels like he got cold feet and needed to make the movie very silly.
Here's what I think he's thinking.
Okay.
Considering the time this was made, I think what he's thinking is, oh my God, I got Johnny Depp in my movie.
I can get Johnny Depp in here. Yeah.
Yeah, I can get Johnny Depp. It doesn't matter. I'm gonna have Johnny Depp in this.
That does make a little bit more sense. Yeah.
And it's like Johnny Depp. Does he want to do a voice? Oh, he wants to do a voice. All right, let's run with this. I think Kevin Smith loves to run with things. That's how this was written, right?
Yeah.
Like high on a podcast.
So like, it's basically Johnny Depp has these scenes that end up taking almost 3 times as long because of this bit he's doing.
Yes.
Which is he's doing a French voice where he speaks very slowly and repeats himself and says like the kind of wrong word when he means a different word. So it just makes interactions take 3 times as long, and it's not funny.
And all he's establishing is that it's a serial killer and he's been investigating.
Yeah.
And it's like, you could have done this so much quicker.
And they do. What's interesting is they have a flashback with him where he did. And it's
that was
like
exhausting.
It was so exhausting. First of all, because it ends up taking no shit. Like we have to pause the movie for like 30-ish minutes just to have Johnny Depp deliver his exposition because of this bit he's doing makes everything take so long. But like this flashback scene where in the flashback, he was investigating the disappearance of a hockey player that Michael Parks had kidnapped. And he actually finds Michael Parks, who's pretending to be this kind of simple-minded doctor named Dr. Moussier, living in this cabin. And they have this scene that's like, if you ignore the exhausting bit that Johnny Depp is doing, it's subtly creepy. Like there's a creepiness to it.
Yeah.
And then
Michael Parks is again, he's great.
He's great. And then it cuts back to them, the flashback end, like Johnny Depp gets uncomfortable and leaves, and then it cuts back to them at the diner when he's telling the story to Haley Joel and the girlfriend. And he's like, the hockey player was probably inside that house. Like I was standing right there. He was probably in there. And I didn't and then we found that guy's torso blocking up a drain a week later. Like it's a chilling thing that he's saying.
Right. The problem is is that he tries to be bigger than he tries to be the biggest person in the movie.
Yeah.
And
he's doing
Michael
Clouseau.
Parks should be.
Yeah.
And Michael Parks needs to be. He should have this character should not have been Johnny Depp. I think it should have just been an actor.
Yeah.
It should have been Ralph Garman or someone like that. Like, it should have just been someone doing a very straight man, like, I'm a detective, I'm very serious. And that's it. Like, it doesn't... Because then nothing he does, that character doesn't add to anything. He just goes along with them and completes the movie. And he's not... He doesn't... It's like Johnny Depp was there, and they're like, fuck, we got Johnny Depp. Well, and he's like, also, I have an idea for a character. And they're like, I guess... But, like, it really doesn't fit with the film.
He helps them solve some... Like, he is a detective. Like, he does...
Yeah, but again, like, he doesn't have to be who he is.
No, he does not have to be a hugely broad comedic character, which I think is a weird instinct. I guess it makes more sense when you figure this was kind of made mid-20-teens, so, like, Johnny Depp it was still cool to have Johnny Depp in your movie.
Yeah, and he's Captain Jack Sparrowing it up, where it's like, he's doing a voice and a thing.
It's just exhausting in this movie.
It really is. Like, that flashback scene, like you said, could have been really creepy if they had done it.
And you can tell because it even still, with all this Johnny Depp nonsense in it, it still is kind of creepy.
Yeah.
So, like, you can imagine how it would have been if it had just been somebody still playing like a comedic detective, but playing it like more quietly, less broad.
Yeah, it's really and like you said, they have all these scenes with him and stuff, and it's like this could have been shorter, could have been more efficient.
It just makes the movie take longer than it should have.
Yeah,
like, the movie's almost 2 hours.
Yeah, it should have been 90 minutes, and this is where you would cut it.
Yeah.
And so, like, again, I get what they were thinking at the time, but it really does kind of stick a wrench in the film. Because then once we get past that, they find the place. They go there. Johnny Depp hands them guns. And again, like Psycho, where it's the sister, right? And,
it's Viggo and Julianne Moore.
Yep. And
Johnny Depp is, of course, the William H. Macy character.
Yep. But what we also learn is that all of this, he was in love with this walrus.
Basically, yeah.
But then he had to kill the walrus. because he was stuck on this island with the walrus when his boat sank. And so at the end, he had to kill and eat the walrus. And this is all so that he could fight Justin Long and give recreate the fight he had with that walrus.
Right.
Essentially.
Yeah. It's he kills and eats the walrus like an hour before a boat shows up and rescues him. So it's like Gift of the Magi, where it's like, oh, if I'd only waited an hour, my walrus friend would still be alive.
Right.
It's like he feels guilty about it. So this whole thing is it's related to this pathology he has over feeling guilty over killing his walrus friend. So he's like, well, I'm going to recreate Mr. Tusk, which is what he named him.
Right. I don't know why he just doesn't buy a walrus. I feel like
just
he has
buy a
resources.
walrus. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, but again, it's like there's no reasoning,
No.
Yeah.
I know why he didn't buy a walrus.
I know why he didn't, because then we wouldn't have a movie. But I had that thought too. I was like, you could probably get a walrus. Maybe not legally, but it's definitely better than abducting people and making walrus suits out of them.
But again, he's unhinged.
Yeah, he is. His cheese has slid off his cracker.
All right. So at the end, he just gets in his own walrus suit.
He gets in his own walrus suit, and they are
like,
just...
we're going to fight like walruses.
We're going to fight like walruses, and they're just smashing up against each other while a video of walruses fighting is projected on the wall behind them.
So
it is
good.
madness.
Yep. And that's when they show up, Haley Joel, and that he breaks out of his walrus suit and is just going to fight him as a human. And you think like, oh yeah, this is it. And Justin Long finds the strength to stab him to death with his tusks, and then the girlfriend and friend walk in with Johnny Depp, who at this point, is useless. Like he's just sort of there.
He was there to he finds a couple of clues for them and leads them there, and that's all. That's what the purpose the character serves.
Yeah, and then he also points his gun at him, but again, I think the friend could have done that, to be honest. Haley Joel could have done that. And so he's about to mercy kill him because they see he's a walrus, and she screams no, and then it cuts to black, and it's a year later, and they go to just the shittiest, most depressing zoo, and there's an outdoor enclosure, Justin Long is still there. It's incredible.
Holy Christ, this ending, dude.
In the moment, so the ending is funny conceptually.
Yes.
Like, describing it is funny. Watching it,
it is one of the most haunting things I've ever seen.
It really is.
It really is.
He's in this shitty enclosure with like a dirty swimming pool,
like the
and
worst,
like a yurt.
The worst tiny city zoo you can imagine.
Yeah, the most depressing thing you could imagine.
Yeah.
And she brings him a fish, and they are calling him, and he comes out, and he's still walrus, and he hungrily eats the fish, and she stares at him, and then there's a point where she says to him, like, they do a flashback where she's like, remember when you used to cry, get high and watch Winnie the Pooh or whatever and cry, and about how like that's what made him a human. She looks at him, says, I love you. Her and Haley Joel leave, and the walrus just starts crying.
Mm-hmm. And then he goes back into his yurt.
And he goes, and then the movie ends. And that's, again, funniest ending. Yeah. Sad to watch. We didn't mention there's a thread throughout, which is that he likes big gulps, and he gets one at the beginning, and then Michael Parks throughout just keeps giving him that big gulp. And it like represents his one thread to humanity, basically.
Yeah.
And then at the end, there's big gulps in the enclosure as well.
Yeah. So it's like he's still in there, but it's yeah.
Again, funny fucking idea. Devastating.
It sort of conceptually a little bit reminds me of the end of Being John Malkovich.
Yeah. It's a fate worse than death.
Yeah. Where
it's
a living hell. It's a living hell.
Yeah. Again, it doesn't matter, but it's very funny to me that he isn't like, in a better zoo on the account of the fact that he is a human.
He's a human.
Turned into a walrus.
He's just a human that's been,
And I feel like science would have something to say about it.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like you'd make some calls and they'd be like, oh, we'll get him a nice place and we'll study him and we'll,
I feel like he should have a therapist, and not like be living in a yurt like an animal.
They could probably do some reconstruction to like make him like have a human tongue again. But this implies that they just brought him to like a shady zoo.
They brought him to a zoo, yeah.
And a guy was like, yeah, I'll take him. He doesn't look like most walruses, but I'll take him.
He looks like a nightmare.
Yeah, they didn't like call anybody. It's so weird that they weren't like, this is the biggest story in the world. We need to, we need to make sure he's taken care of.
Well, it's not even that. It's like he's your friend. He was abducted. He is in desperate need of medical care.
Doesn't seem like they did any of that.
Yeah, but it's because he
like
wanted
his
this.
Scars are still ripe. Like a year later.
Yeah. I mean, it's because he wanted this ending.
Yeah, I know. And again, it's a heightened reality throughout. I mean, he turns him into a walrus. That's I don't think is possible.
He is a man that says, answering the age-old question, is man deep down a walrus? Like that's the movie we're in. That's the reality we're in.
Exactly. Any other thoughts before we compare it to Chasing Amy?
Yeah, my main thought is, I mean, you've all probably gleaned if you're still listening to the episode at this point, is that I mostly liked this movie.
Me too.
I almost really liked it. The Johnny Depp stuff really brings it, and it's even if it wasn't him, just like the way the character is executed really brings this movie to a grinding halt.
Yeah, Johnny Depp as a character was a misstep, and then of course as Johnny Depp was a misstep.
Yeah, and it just becomes a new. It discovers a new plane of intolerable by being Johnny Depp.
And I don't know what the story behind it is. It just feels like it probably has to do with Johnny Depp being there.
I assume it's because, his daughter is friends with Kevin Smith's daughter, and they're both in the movie.
Oh, yeah. I mean, like, then you bring in Johnny Depp, and it's probably a thing where it's like, they get energized, and they're like, oh, yeah, that is a really funny idea. And then they don't. You know what I mean? Like, it feels like it was something that was, like, thought up between him and Johnny Depp.
Yeah.
And maybe he didn't... You got Johnny Depp there, who at the time is a big star.
One of the biggest stars.
You know, if I was making a movie and if fucking, I don't know, Daniel Craig showed up and he was like, I want to have a dildo on my forehead. And I'd be like, yeah, sure, man.
Obviously,
like, if I was like, if I was like a indie filmmaker and I had landed this big star through circumstance, I'd let them do whatever the fuck they wanted.
Just one dildo? Is that you sure?
Yeah.
I can get you more.
Like, it's not appropriate at all. You're playing a priest in a funeral scene.
A whole suit of dildos, if you like.
Yeah.
Whatever you want, Daniel Craig. Like. Yeah.
Yeah, it feels like it wasn't appropriate, but...
Right, it what he wanted to do, changes the movie.
Yeah, and I don't think Johnny Depp cared about the movie.
No.
I think that's what it is.
So yeah,
because if he did, he would say, "I don't want to do this character."
Yeah. Or he would have done.
I'll play it straight.
A different character. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, my final thing is I don't.
This
movie sort of has the reputation of being like the beginning of like Kevin Smith's like going downhill. I think it's been pegged as that by some critics.
I don't agree.
I really disagree. I think this is one of his better movies.
Also, after watching Yoga Hosers, I don't know. I think Yoga Hosers is fun. He's going to make Moose Jaws, right? And I assume that's going to be... Because this is Walrus Psycho. Yeah. That's what we're learning.
Yes.
So Moose Jaws, I mean, I'm very excited for.
Yeah.
I'm sure he won't call it Moose Jaws, but...
He might. He might call it Antlers.
He might.
There's already a movie called Antlers.
Yeah, he can make another. Yeah, I really don't think he has a downhill thing.
Mm-mm.
I think that he's just evolved as a filmmaker, and he doesn't always do the very mainstream stuff. What I will say is, I like this film. I never want to see it again.
I'll probably watch it again.
I might make someone watch it.
There's cool stuff in it that I'd like to see again. Like I'd like to see all the Michael Parks monologues again, and really pay attention to them. And yeah, I also want the experience of showing this to other people.
Yeah, but generally it's a hard watch because it's just it's kind of a bummer.
It's so weird and out of its mind, but in like a genuinely disturbing way. So it's like, oh my god. Yeah. I just wanted to end by this is not even I don't even think this is like Jay and Silent Bob Reboot is I thought was a worse movie.
That's probably my least favorite of his films.
Yeah. So it's definitely not only is it not
I'm
like
not about
a backslide for him. I think this is one of his better movies.
Yeah, I do too. I think it was a really good and fascinating film.
Yeah.
And I feel like more movies need to be this chaotic.
Yes,
like, I like the chaos.
That's
of it.
one the big thing I really appreciate about like this stage of Kevin Smith's career is how like anti-mainstream he is.
Yeah,
it's
he's
like
just making these fuck you movies.
Yeah, it's like, well, I'm just gonna make whatever I want to make. Like,
He's doing what like Tarantino keeps saying he was going to do, right?
Yeah.
Which was after 10 films, he's not necessarily going to retire. He's just going to stop giving a shit. This is Kevin Smith's Coppola years.
Yeah.
Like late stage Coppola. This is his Twixt. Like he's just making shit for himself that he thinks is fun. And it's kind of freeing, and it allows him to do some stuff that's like, holy shit, this is great. Like there's no pressure.
Right, there's no expectations on a movie like this. So
yeah. It's it's really fun to watch this era where he's just free.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's talk about how it compared to Chasing Amy, because spoilers, it does.
It kind of does thematically, yeah.
Well, let's start with the fact that two friends making podcasts, two friends doing a nerdy occupation together.
Yep.
Hanging out. That's exactly how Chasing Amy starts, but with comic book making.
Mm-hmm.
It's a love triangle between them and the. Yep, one of them is an asshole who is.
In this,
you realize is like you kind of realize quick in this, but he's always an asshole.
Yeah, I was gonna say in this movie, Justin Long kind of is both Ben Affleck and Jason Lee in Chasing Amy.
Yeah, he kind of is,
because he's both like the toxic guy who either doesn't realize or doesn't care that he's toxic, and it winds up destroying his relationships. But he's also like the asshole that Jason Lee is in Chasing Amy.
As we predicted, this is about Michael Park's character is trying to change Justin Long. And it's that thread we kind of called for Chasing Amy, which is like, Ben Affleck that's kind of part of it.
Yeah.
But I didn't realize how there was going to be like the love triangle comparison and all that. And it ends similar. It ends sad. And there's no going back. Justin Long, there is no going back for him. He blew it.
Mm-hmm.
And there's still love there, but it doesn't work because you can't fuck a walrus, folks. Maybe you can.
If you try hard and believe in yourself, you can do anything you want.
Yeah, that's true. I shouldn't. Yeah. But yeah, it's oddly similar.
Yeah, the thematic one really was really unexpected for me. I was like, no, this is about a guy who's like his own worst enemy, just making himself into a bad person and destroying the two most important relationships in his life because he doesn't value them.
Yeah. It works really well.
Yeah.
Like, this was such an arbitrary thing we did where we linked up these in this way. And it's funny how much it's linking up.
Yeah.
So excited for the Dogma Red State one. It's like
that is going to be pretty sweet. Yeah. I already know like exactly
I know
what
at least the broad strokes. Yeah.
The broad strokes are very obvious.
Yeah. So that's going to be very interesting.
Yeah.
But that's pretty much where the comparison stopped for me. But that honestly, that's way more than I thought.
Infinitely more. Like more, anything more than zero is infinitely more than I expected.
Yeah, absolutely. What a fascinating film.
It really was. Yeah. Like when it started, I was like, I don't know. And then by the time it gets to the first monologues with Justin Long and Michael Parks, and they're in it's exactly like the Psycho thing where you can see all the birds on the wall, and just in that scene, it's I was just sort of stopped. It's like, is this movie good? Holy shit!
Yeah, I think this movie
is good.
How did that happen?
Like, I'm actually creeped out, and I know what's gonna happen. I know he's gonna make him into a walrus.
Yeah. Yeah, I know where it's heading.
I know where this is going.
They didn't like hide that from,
no.
Yeah.
You're right. It's so gleefully chaotic.
Yeah. And again, I think Red State is the same. Mm-hmm. And it's weird because his comedies aren't. His comedies are chaotic, but like in a more the stoner comedy way.
Yeah.
Where and I guess you could argue there is similarities where it's like Clerks fucking a dead body in the bathroom, everything comes to a screeching halt, He does do that where he's like, where like suddenly things just fall apart for the characters in unexpected ways.
Yeah.
But he doesn't do it that often. I
No.
would say, yeah.
And it can feel more rambling in a comedy.
Yeah, exactly. And in this, I don't know, something about it really works.
It's
for me,
when it's in a horror movie, it feels more purposeful because it's all about keeping you rudderless. You know, like you can't find purchase, so you're just like you can't ever get your balance and throughout the rest of the movie.
Right, there's nothing to grasp onto, and it also, I think more horror movies need to do this because otherwise the characters get this plot armor that it's like you're not like Red State. You get to a point where you're like, oh, no one's safe.
I think every character dies by the midway point, right?
All the main characters, the characters you start with, die by the midpoint of Red State. Spoilers. And so it's like, shit, I don't know
where this is going.
Yeah. And that's such a smart instinct with a lot of these.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm all set.
I'm all smithed up. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm all smithed up. I want to thank @NerdNumbers.
Yeah, thank you @NerdNumbers
for doing this podcast. This is very much our jam.
Yeah, extremely so.
Yeah.
And I don't.
If you're
and I'm definitely. I just wanted to say real quick. Definitely grateful to Nerd Numbers because I'm not sure I ever would have watched this movie.
Same here. This was on my list, but it's like it's hard to get around to movies like this.
Yeah.
Because they're bleak ahead of time.
And it didn't get good, this didn't exactly get great buzz when it came out. Like I said, a couple of people sort of pegged it as, oh, Kevin Smith has really fallen from grace now. He's making walrus horror movies. But, like, fuck all that.
This is great.
Watch this movie.
Yeah, check out this movie.
Yeah, it is way, way better than you're probably expecting.
Yeah, for sure. This was through our Patreon. If you're interested, you can go to patreon.com/gamefullyunemployed. For $5 a month, you get access to a bunch of exclusive podcasts like Tom and Jeff Watch Batman, Fox Mulder's Maniac, Star Trek The Next Futurama, and Spiel Boys. We watch movies every Friday night with our patrons.
Sure
we have
do.
a bunch of tiers. One of them being you can do custom podcasts like this one you're listening to. So check all of that out.
I think we might have to watch this on one Friday.
Oh, no. The
Johnny Depp. Yeah, never mind.
Yeah, it's got Johnny Depp in it.
Fuck. We also have a store. Head over to gamefullyunemployed.com where you can find a link to our Teespring store where we have all kinds of cool original artwork and designs you can get on t-shirts, mugs, stickers, posters, all sorts of things. So check that out.
Check it out. And, don't fuck a walrus. Fuck a walrus.
Be you.
Yeah, be you.
Be you.
That's a good way of putting it.
I think that's the message of this movie is don't try to be something that you think is going to make you successful. Just be you.
Yeah, Michael Parks, be you.
Don't grow a scumbag mustache and make a podcast about bullying people. Because you might get turned into a walrus by Michael Parks.
Classic fable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's one of Aesop's fables.
All right.
Bye.
Noise, smoking weed, doing coke, drinking beers.